Amazing, amazing. Who else is here? Matthew? Cool. Lauren. Okay. All right then. So I think we're built to start. So we'll start with a short presentation from Vance Roush. He's our guest speaker. Yeah. Matthew? Let me see. Okay. So I would go to Lauren. I'll go through a little bit of an introduction. Um, Vance Rush, or otherwise called Pastor Vance, he's somebody that I respect a lot. Young in his early 30s, but doing really amazing work.
You
Um,
know that person does. You know that person doesn't want to, and you're still going to him.
Hi guys, can you please mute if you're not speaking? Uh, she is somebody I respect a lot, and also very doing really amazing work and a very high performance, person. Previously, he worked in tech at Google as product manager, and after then, he co-founded Vive Church Global, which is also a church he's currently executive pastor. And more recently, he's a co-founder of Overflow, which mission to extend prosperity to giving and prosperity all over the world. Pastor Vance, I'll give you the floor. We have really super exciting young, fellows for Wild Labs. We have fellows from the U.S., Canada, Brazil, Nigeria, Kenya, and India as well, India, Pakistan as well. So it's a very pretty much global audience of young people who are passionate about social entrepreneurship and making an impact in their community. They're super excited to hear about your perspective about life and what are the defining moments in your career and your personal life and your growing up, and share some experience as well. So I'll give you the floor right now. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. It's good to be here with everybody. I don't see anybody though. Nobody has their video on. I see only a picture of Gabby,
Okay, who wants to turn on
Ayomide.
the
Oh,
video?
there we
Gabby,
go. Hey, Gabby. There we
awesome.
go. Vidit just turned on his video. That's very cool. Yeah, would love to see you if you're in a place to have a conversation, because I hope it's not just me talking, but being able to answer any of the questions that you may have, and being able to see your face and your response helps me to kind of direct the conversation as I need. But thank you, Gabby and Vidit, for joining on via video. Gabby, where are you at?
I'm from Brazil, Rio de
Brazil?
Janeiro.
Rio.
Yeah.
Oh, I have a lot of Brazilian friends. My Brazilian
Oh,
friends,
nice, nice.
they love having fun. I don't know what it is about Brazilian culture. They love having fun,
And excited. We are
and
all
they
very, very happy. Like,
always very happy.
yeah.
Yeah, always having a good time, always eating good food. Always eating very, very good food. So that's cool. How did you hear about Y Labs? Why did you join?
Like, I think I found out in Instagram, but I don't remember because it was like last year. And
Wow,
I enjoy because I think it's very important to keep up with like innovation and technology.
that's awesome. How
And
about you, Vidit? Where are you at, and why did you join Y Labs?
I'm in India, in New Delhi. Joined Y Labs because someone I know told me about it and it sounded interesting. So yeah, it sounded interesting to learn about entrepreneurship business.
That's very cool. I spent a little bit of time in Hyderabad,
Oh,
in India. It's kind of like, I think, one of the tech cities within India.
yeah, it's one of the biggest like tech cities.
Yeah, because I used to work for Google, and so they sent me there for 2 weeks on a trip. And India is amazing, but especially the food in Hyderabad, the food was very spicy. And I would tell them the biryani, I would tell them, hey, I don't want spicy. And then they're like, yeah, yeah, not spicy, not spicy. And then it was like so spicy. And then after the meal, they gave me yogurt. And I was like, if you gave me yogurt at the end of the meal, that means you knew it was spicy.
Oh, in India, we don't understand the meaning of no spice.
Exactly, exactly, exactly. That's awesome. Well, it's cool to meet somebody from Brazil, meet somebody from India. Um, I am part of a global community as well. My wife and I co-founded a church called Vive alongside an Australian couple. So if you go to vivechurch.org, you can see what we're all about. We are, I believe, one of the coolest churches on the planet. I mean, Michael decided to come, so obviously we have to be one of the coolest churches on the planet. We have a lot of young people, and specifically because we started in Palo Alto, California, the Silicon Valley, we have a lot of people that are also in technology, which gives our church kind of a unique perspective in the ways that we do church. So we do church through broadcast technology. We put everything on YouTube. Our production and our creative really push the boundaries in terms of being innovative, right? And really, since we started this in 2012 with just 7 people in the living room, we've seen now 4,000 people become members across the globe, which is really cool, whether they're part of one of our 10 physical locations or whether they're an active member through our Vive online campus. Um, and that's kind of been one of the main things that I've been building over the past 10 years. In addition to that, I've been in technology. Like I mentioned, I started my career at Google. And then from there, I led product management for a growth stage tech startup in the Silicon Valley, where I learned a lot more about technology, being mentored by the CTO of that company. But really, my passion has come from how technology is really at the intersection of philanthropy. Because from our church community, specifically, I've had the privilege to see our thousands of members give away tens of millions of dollars in the past 10 years. A church, right? Any church is a 501c3. What that means is it's a charitable organization, right? The way that it continues to run its operations is through the generosity and the donations of the members within the community. We don't charge a membership fee. You don't have to pay anything to be part of the community or to receive the services of the community. But if you've received value from the community, many people decide out of the goodness of their own heart to give back to that community. In the Bible, actually, it teaches about this principle of generosity. It calls this principle the tithe. The tithe is this understanding in the Bible that none of the money that we actually have is our own, that ultimately God is the one who provides everything that we have, any of the food that we have, any of the money that we have in the bank, any of the resources that we've been blessed with. Ultimately, that's all in control by God and given to us by God. So, as a representation of being thankful for that, as Christians, we believe to give at least 10% of that back to the community, and that's called the tithe. Tithe actually literally means tenth, right? And so that's been the main vehicle that I've seen people be generous. And literally, like I said, collectively, we've raised tens of millions of dollars through our generous members and donors that go back into the community to build the community or go to partners in the cities that we serve to solve problems like medical debt, homelessness, supporting single moms, etc. So many different things. You could probably, personalize it for your area, right? In India and Brazil, in Nigeria, wherever you're from, there's probably problems, right, within your community that the community should pay attention to and solve, right? If there's people living on the streets, hopefully that there's leaders rising up to help solve that problem. If there's people that can't put food on the table, right, for their family because maybe they're a single mom and doing this on their own, there should be leaders in the community that step up and try to help them, right? I think that ultimately, at the end of the day, you can continue to live this life, but if you're not aware of the people around you that have been put in front of you to help and to impact, it's going to be difficult to live a truly fulfilling life. And I've met everywhere from millionaires to billionaires that have made it, but still are unhappy because success and money really are not the things that bring fulfillment, right? And so that's what we've been really passionate about at Vive to teach, and it's been working. People are starting to kind of understand that and give, beyond themselves and to connect themselves to a greater mission and a greater purpose. And all of that has been the inspiration of my newest company called Overflow, which is a financial technology software that helps people give specifically stock. So I'm not sure how much the stock market is popular in your city, wherever you're at, but at least in the USA, and other places like London and Singapore, the stock market is actually very popular. People are given the opportunity in America to be able to invest into companies like Google and Apple and Facebook. Actually, the stock market is a global thing. There's people, that are foreign to the US that sometimes have the opportunity to invest into US based companies as well, right? And so the stock market continues to become more and more popular, more and more accessible for people with new technology. And I saw this opportunity for us creating an app to make it super easy for people to give some of the stocks that they've invested into to some of their favorite causes, right? And so that's what Overflow is. Overflow is a stock donation platform that allows you to give some of your stock to your favorite causes to be able to help them continue to fulfill their mission and their vision. We're starting with stocks, but we want to unlock other really cool asset classes like cryptocurrency, and NFTs, and a lot of the other type of we call non-cash assets. Right now, it's pretty easy for people to give via credit card or debit card or cash to a nonprofit or to a charity, but it's not easy to give non-cash assets, and so that's why we exist, and that's what we've been able to kind of really pioneer in the past year. We're actually 2 days ago we turned 1 year old as a company, and we have about 25 people across the globe. I actually have a Brazilian developer, Gabby, so that's cool. He's in Sao Paulo. And then we have somebody in Mexico. We have a person in London, so not too far from you, Vidit, over on that side. And yeah, continuing to grow. So that's a little bit about my journey, what we're doing at Overflow. But I want to answer any questions that you all have.
Thank you so much. So if you have a question, feel free to drop your question in the chat, and I will take your question from there, or I can call you up to say your question. But I wanted to ask Pastor Vance, which is my pastor and also a mentor and somebody I look up to, um, about growing up. How was your childhood like? Being a teenager, and what events make the biggest impact on your career, on your life, afterwards, right? So
Yeah, I grew up in a Christian household. My parents are Filipino immigrants to the US. So faith was a big part of their life, and that's something that they instilled in us. Work ethic was also a big part of their life, being an immigrant family into America, really starting from nothing, and them working hard and modeling to me what hard work looks like to be able to pursue, right? Even though it may be flawed, the promise of the American dream. And so those were some of the kind of early things that I observed in my family dynamic. One of the things that shaped me, I would say, that was kind of like one of those, uh, I guess, heart sinking moments was when I realized that. So I applied to Stanford, University of Washington, as I was applying to college, and I knew that I was going to get into one of them, right? And I ended up getting into the University of Washington, which was such a blessing because I got to pay in-state tuition and all that type of stuff. But when I started calculating the cost, I assumed my parents would have a college fund set aside for me, and I just asked them. I didn't know. I just asked them, "Hey, so like, are you guys going to be able to help me? Like, do we have some sort of college fund?" And they were honest with me saying that they didn't, they just kind of were working hard to be able to provide for us for what we had. And that was kind of a heart sinking moment because I only had a summer before joining. And I knew that if I didn't come up with a certain amount of money, I would either be like in debt, like really, really in debt, to go to college, or I just wouldn't be able to go to college. And so I think in those moments, those heart thinking type moments, you have one of two choices, right? It's to kind of coil back in fear, right? And to just really be deflated, discouraged, and and to be debilitated, to get stuck, right? Or use it as an opportunity to just fuel determination and motivation and really try to solve problems, right? And I honestly could have gone one of two ways. Thankfully, and partly because of having the opportunity to do so and having the right people around me, I chose to use it as a motivating event in my life, and I saw an opportunity to work 3 jobs that summer and to really come up with the first year's tuition, and that started kind of a habit and a pattern in my life. That anytime I come against obstacle, first going to trying to solve the problem and being optimistic about it instead of pessimistic and staying stuck, right? So that's probably one specific example I'd give.
That's fantastic. That's what I'm talking about. Today we actually learned about personal wellness and how do you transmutate emotions, negative emotions into positive. And I think that's a very good example of that. Actually, you go from discouragement to using that as a motivation factor to your career. So like you grew up very early on, right? Trying to learn a lot about hard work and actually paying your way and going working while you're studying, and you decide on a software engineering career. Can you walk us through how do you make that decision? And versus now, why philanthropy is now a big part of what you're trying to do. You know, going from working hard, paying your way to engineering, then to running a church to philanthropy. Can you what do you think is the line that join all of those decision decision poles in your career and life? Yeah.
I think something that is deeply human and connects all of us is our desire to make an impact, right? That at the end of our life, you know, people would see, hey, that was a life worth living, right? That's a life that really impacted people. I think we would all like the opportunity for just having the peace to know, hey, we did all that we can to live the best life that we could and live a life with meaning, right, and value, or else like I don't know, like I think it would be really hard to wake up in the morning if we didn't have that purpose and that meaning and the desire to have an impact, right? So I think that's kind of the thread that guides a lot of what I do. um in terms of what I'm doing now, I've had the revelation that there are so many forces in this world to bring about change, right? I'm a big believer in capitalism and company formation because companies like Amazon and Google, they're not perfect, but they have made many people's lives better, right? I think that we all would agree that being able to Google something that you don't know is a value add to your life, right? I think most people would agree that have Amazon Prime, being able to order something and it shows up to your doorstep the next day is a value add to your life. So, whether you agree with the company or how it's being run or not, like there's many people that are getting served by these companies that love the products and the services that they've created to add value to their life, right? I think that's really cool to be able to add value to people's lives. So capitalism and company formation is one big vehicle to make an impact, right? Government is another big way to make an impact, right? Certain policies, right? We had the whole civil rights movement in America, and certain policies that were iterated on and fixed and evolved and more empathetic and more understanding around equality has fundamentally changed whole people groups' lives, right? And so being a politician, being a policymaker, being involved in government, being civically engaged can really make an impact and raise the quality of life for people as well. And this is where philanthropy comes in. There are certain things that companies and governments don't serve. And that's the gap that philanthropy plays in. That's where nonprofits play in, right? So, for example, you can have a great government and you can have great companies, but how come there's still homeless people on the street? Obviously, those two entities are not solving the problem fully, right? How come you can have some good governments and some good companies, but not everybody has clean water, right? Again, that's where nonprofits stand in the gap and create that bridge where companies and governments don't specifically play. So it's an area that I feel like is not sexy to people. Like, not the best talent goes into the area of social impact or philanthropy, because everybody, a lot of people are still driven by money, right? But if we can kind of align those incentives a bit more, and make this area cool and attractive, where you can do really well in your life, but also do really good in your life, I think that is a recipe for incredible impact.
No, that's definitely super awesome. That's super awesome. Thank you for sharing that. One of our mission at Wire Labs, is just the fact that we want to encourage young people to not see technology and innovation antithetical to social innovation. Because over the last 10, 12 years, we've created about $200 trillion of wealth globally. We've also, created technologies like blockchain, wasn't existing about 15 years ago. AI, wasn't that popular. We put 2.2 billion people on the internet. We're talking about autonomous cars, but how much of that are we actually doing? Right, when it comes to social impact, where we have about 1 billion people living in abject poverty, we have actually half of the world's population today do not have access to health insurance, right, or healthcare. So they talk about 1 point something billion people can't are either homeless or living in shelters, as you said earlier. So how can we actually begin to see technology as a means, technology and wealth and talent as a means to actually solve the biggest challenges that we face as a human race? And you actually nailed in on that. And I also agree with you that, hey, capitalism is great. It's probably one of the greatest inventions that we've created as a human race. But also, in terms of when you do not have capital, and or where there's a crisis, capitalism falls flat because there's no market, that exists in those circumstances. And so just where the nonprofit, they actually deliberately constructing business models to target, impact areas, is super, super important. And thank you for actually explaining a lot of that, so very well. Um, in terms of your, I mean, getting to this point in your life, you made a lot of decisions, and then you mentioned earlier that, impact has been one, criteria, when you come to a turning point and trying to make a decision. Can you tell us about, maybe, if you can, one of the biggest decisions that you've made in your life, or the most impactful decision that you made in your career or life? And, if you can paint a picture of what happened during that period and how that helped you to get to where you are today.
I think the biggest decision was to align myself with a relationship with God, right? It, that is the reason why I decided to start a church, right? There's a reason why I married the woman that I married, right? That's the reason I'm building the company that I'm currently building. I think it all comes from my revelation that there is a God, there's a God that created me, and that God has a meaning and a purpose for my life. And the God that I believe in is Jesus. And so that is just, it's everything, right? It shapes everything. And so whether you have heard that message or have um, been presented that message, whether you believe in that message or not, I encourage everybody to be really intentional about seeking, right, first principles, and seeking the truth on your meaning and your purpose and how you got here. Asking the big questions, right? Like, how did I get here? Why am I here? And what's the purpose for my life? I, I don't think that you can have a shortage of actually asking yourself that question, and really pursuing the conclusions for yourself, right? I'm a big proponent of that. I believe that if you seek it, you will find it for yourself. And those are monumental trajectory shifting moments in your life, right? And so knowing your intention, knowing the why behind why you do things will be the very reason why it's going to be easier to get up in the morning, because you'll get up energized, you'll get up understanding why you're doing things, instead of just feeling like you're floating, feeling like, okay, I don't really understand why I'm doing what I'm doing. Those things are very discouraging and not motivating, right? It's kind of like when you grow up and you're like questioning your parents said something and you're like, why? And they say, because I said so. Well, that's not very motivating. Right? Like if you actually understood why they said something, then maybe you would be excited to do it because then you can either agree with it or disagree with it, but at least you understand. Right. So really seeking understanding about some of these deep questions in life is something that I'd highly encourage everybody in this call.
That's super awesome. That yeah, aligning yourself with your purpose and finding asking the good questions. So I know that Vidit has been itching to ask a question. So Vidit, you can unmute yourself and ask a question. So
Um, but I have like multiple questions about your business, but what you just said was a bit more intriguing to me. So could you like could you go a bit more in depth into like what your meaning, what you found your meaning in life to be up till now?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, um, my journey to becoming a follower of Jesus started when I was studying abroad in Italy. I was, my junior year in college. I know some of you, what high school, college, right? Age. My junior year of college, I was very much focused on living for myself and maximizing happiness, right? That was like what I lived for because I kind of grew up in a Christian household, but I really didn't believe any of it. It was just more like a social construct for me. My parents went, and that's where my friends were. And that's really the only reason why. But when I went to college and I was by myself, like I saw no reason for me to go to church or anything like that. It just wasn't real to me, right? There was no purpose in it. And so the only other thing that I could default to outside of that was, well, cool, like I just want to do things that make me happy, right? And I want to do things that are fun. Like, why not? Because it feels good, right? And so when I studied abroad in Italy my junior year, I studied for 6 months over there in Milan. And every single night we would go out and we would have a great time. Like I had a great time, met a lot of new people from all over the world and literally led a life that was just about maximizing my happiness, right? And I didn't do anything bad. It just was like having a good time. I remember one time sitting outside of a club and having this moment. I didn't hear audibly from above or, from God or anything like that, like an audible voice. I just got this deep sense in my spirit, this question or this statement, I have more for you, Vance. I just heard that like really deep down in my spirit, like this thing that was basically challenging me, not in like a way that was condemning, but the way that was inspiring, right? Like it was kind of like, I have so much more for you, Vance, right? And I didn't really know what that was. I just knew that it was true, right? What I was doing was very, very self absorbed. What I was doing is really just trying to maximize my own personal happiness. And at the end of the day, if I was really, really honest with myself, it wasn't super fulfilling. And so that's when I committed to actually go on a journey of understanding the teachings of Jesus, and to actually like submit myself to a community of other people that were following Jesus's teachings. And through that, I understood that the meaning of life is actually more about serving others, and not just serving myself, right? And that's kind of what drives me is like, cool, like how many people can I impact? How many people can I serve? And with my company, our mission is to inspire the world to give because we fundamentally believe that when people give, they live a better life. So if that's true, if when people give, they live a better life, why would we not want everybody to experience that? Right. So that's kind of what drives me now.
thank you so much, Professor Vance. Vidit, do you have follow-up questions? Or you want to review your questions later on?
I mean that's up to other people's question. I've got like 4 or 5 written down, so I'm good for whenever.
Okay, I think you should go ahead. Let's take one or two more questions from you.
Okay. So first, it was about your business overflow, about donating stocks. So what do you have to consider when you're thinking about, so with donation of stock, because stocks, I don't know much about them, but they're not like a static currency. Like they can change, they can rise and fall whenever. So what do you have to think? What do you have to like consider? What are the challenges of donating stocks? Or like if someone's like donating some stocks that are failing, so over time they'll lose their value, or over time they'll gain their value, or something like that.
Yeah, it's a good question. In the US, there's kind of a built-in mechanism for that already. People should only donate stock if it's growing, because if it's growing, then you can save on what's called capital gains tax. There's really no benefit for a donor to donate stock if it's going down, right? Might as well just sell it and then give the cash that you get from it, right? You would only donate stock directly if it was growing, if it was appreciating. And so that's kind of a built-in mechanism already inherently within stock donations. But yes, like you said, stocks are volatile. Specifically like other non-cash assets like Bitcoin, very volatile, right? You can't really predict if it's going to be up or down the next day. So that creates some challenges, right? That's why a lot of our nonprofits, once they receive the stock, they want it liquidated immediately because they don't want the chance of it going down. But that's really on the choice of the nonprofit. Here's what we say, that without overflow, you wouldn't have gotten the stock anyways, right? So it's providing a net new channel that they otherwise wouldn't have had. So even maybe, they don't liquidate it immediately and it goes down. Well, you only really lose money if you sell it, right? And so if it's like a if it's like a really if it's like Facebook or Amazon or Apple, even if it went down, probably is best if you don't need it right now to just hold, right? Because it'll eventually go up if you believe in the company's going to last for the next 10 years, right? And so those are some of the dynamics that we do have to think about, though. But I think there is this trend that people are seeing that even fiat, right, like USD, like US currency, is not necessarily like the most stable thing either, right? Because of inflation and the government's ability to just print a bunch of it. That's why cryptocurrency is so popular now, right? So ultimately, all of these channels for donations, all of them are actually just value exchanges. Money is actually not really real, right? It's just like an accounting system, right? And so stocks are just a more and more popular way to do accounting, right? Value exchange. And so as long as those principles are true, we're a company that's just helping people transfer value from one place to another place to accomplish a goal. That's essentially what we're doing, right? So it's a good question, though. That is a challenge because it's not yet as common, right?
Cool. I have a follow-up question to that. Going from being, working for a large tech company like Google and, running a church full time and then, running a church and then a startup technology company, what are the biggest challenges that you face as an entrepreneur? And what advice would you give for, young folks starting out very early as an entrepreneur and running your own company from your experience, the challenges that you faced and how you overcame them?
The number one challenge but opportunity that I love building is culture, right? So if you have the right people and you build the right culture, you can do anything, right? But it's really hard to build culture because culture leaks all the time. If you don't have strong values to guide your culture, it's really hard to build a culture. So it's just honestly creating the right values, having a system in place to reinforce those values to build a strong culture. If you have a strong culture that promotes things like unity, initiative, innovation, things like that, it actually doesn't matter what you're building, you'll be able to build it, right? And so, but it's the hardest thing, right? It's the hardest thing to build culture because ultimately culture is shaped by people and people are messy, right? People have their own agendas, people have their own obstacles, people have their own backgrounds and opinions. And so how do you take, this kind of chaos and all these different people dynamics and how do you bring it together in alignment to be one team moving in one direction? moving with the same purpose, right? That's a lot of hard work. That's a lot of, reinforcing your values and your vision like every day, every week, every month, right? And so some of the most successful companies have some of the best cultures, right? Where Google is successful because when I was there, it just like they were so good at reinforcing their cultures, do no evil, automate everything, a strong engineering culture, right? Problem solving. There were so many different things that were just so ingrained into the Google DNA that when new people came in, they just were like sucked into the vacuum of their culture, right? And so, yeah, that's one of the hardest things, but one of the most important things.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Um, Vidit, let's go to your third question. Okay. Okay. Awesome, Chidera. I'll call on you. So.
Um, um, this is about your church, which was similar to the stocks question, but I'm not exactly sure how to ask this. But it's just in a what are the dynamics of human compassion and like in terms of a business, like in your church. So you said that people donate money if they can, but apart from that is there anything else like from human compassion that affects the way you run the church? It's a weird question. I don't exactly know what I'm asking, but
Are you asking like reasons why people will give,
yeah,
or
yeah.
what
Um,
happens if people can't give? Is that what you're saying?
yes. And what changes when people, what changes in the church when people change themselves from really from
Oh,
following your rules? Yeah,
that's good. That's
that
good.
kind of, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So we try to kind of stay away from language like rules, right? Because we don't actually impose anything on people. It's people's choice whether they want to live a certain way or not, right? You're welcome to come to Vive whether you believe in what we believe or not, right? Actually, we have people that are Muslim, we have people that are Hindu, we have people that are Jewish that actually come to Vive, right? 25% of our church are not Christian. Right. So we have this saying, you can belong before you believe in what we believe. And so we don't impose anything on anybody because ultimately, um, uh, if I persuade you to follow a rule, there's going to be somebody else that's more persuasive to follow their rules. Right. And so it's not a very effective way to lead in my opinion. But we believe that people are intelligent and they're smart and they can, in time, discern what's real and what's not. And so all we can do is propose principles, right? Model those principles and give people the choice of if they want to adopt those principles or not. Do we treat people differently if they choose to, you know, live by those principles or not? No, not at all. Like our mission as a church is to love on people, to make people feel like they're accepted, that they have a place to belong, because we believe that that's one of the biggest epidemics in the world is with social media, with technology. One of the biggest things is people are becoming more isolated, right? And they can like literally live a whole life just on the internet, but not know a soul or be doing life with anybody, right? Which is like, not going to lead to a great life. And so, that's kind of how we approach it. Um, I will say specifically in regards to giving, everybody can give, right? If you have just 2 pennies in your pocket, you can give, right? It's not about like, everybody equally being able to give the same amount, but it's everybody equally believing that giving is valuable, right? And so that's the cool thing about giving is that even if you have 1 cent, you have an opportunity to give. And most people have more than 1 cent, right? And if they have 0 cents, right, then hopefully we can inspire enough people to give so that those people can actually have a few cents to give, if that makes sense.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I have Gabby. Gabby? Hi, Gabby.
Hi, so yeah, I would like to ask you, what tip would you give to a person that still haven't found their purpose and like meaning to life?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I would really go back to what I said earlier on understanding where you came from, right? And why you're here. If you understand those questions, then it's going to be a lot easier to have a framework to understand what your purpose is, right? So for example, um, if I am going to a particular destination, right, it would be helpful to understand where my point of origin is, right? If I don't understand my point of origin, I don't know what the next step to take is, right? In point of my destination. So, for example, if you have Google Maps or Waze, right, it has 2 points, right? It has the current location that you're in, and then the point of destination. Those are the two things that you need to be able to navigate your journey, right? It's the same thing with life, right? You can have potentially an idea of where you want to go, but you're actually not going to be able to fully navigate life if you don't first locate where you're at and how you got there, right? And so a lot of people focus on, oh, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? But not enough on, wait, how did I even get here? Right? Like, do I believe that I'm here because of evolution? Do I believe that I'm here because of a big bang? Do I believe that I'm here because of some God? Do I believe that, like what do I believe? And I feel like that existential framework is actually one that is very helpful to shape, you know, where I should then go. Right. And so that might be like a really heavy topic and a scary one for some people. But I think if you actually pursue it, then it clarifies a lot of things.
Thank you so much. I have Chidera.
Yeah, my question is a bit more on your journey in like work. So after when you had the job in Google, how was the transition from that to starting your own business? Like, how did you make the decision? Was it an easy decision to leave a more stable
Yeah,
area
very,
to?
very scary, man. Yeah, it's like one of the scariest decisions, leaving something that is so secure. Google's not going anywhere, right? A good paycheck to something that is uncertain, right? So that's the thing. I think that um, there's two things. There's fear and there's faith, right? Fear comes from the unknown, right? That's when you're usually fearful, is when you step into a place that's unknown or uncertain, right? Because uncertainty can breed fear. But the the other is the opposite to fear is actually or kind of like the anecdote to fear also lives in the same place. So faith is also in the area of the uncertain and the unknown. So you have a choice. Do I want to act in fear, right? Or do I want to act in faith? And so ultimately, that was the mechanism that I used to actually make the leap. But it's very scary, right? But faith is not the absence of doubt. Faith is just the presence of belief, right? It's this optimistic viewpoint that, hey, it's going to be okay, right? It's going to be okay. Um, and so that's kind of what helped me make the leap. But it's very scary.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. I have Chijindu. Do you want to go for it? Are you there? Chijindu. Yeah, please, you can unmute yourself and speak.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so I wanted to ask, sorry, I wrote it down somewhere. So, as a church and as an individual, like, have you ever been faced with slanderous comments against like the integrity of your church in relations to your business? And if you have, how did you handle it?
Yeah, really good question. Um, yeah, there's always going to be haters, right? Like, you know, there's always people out there that have time, I guess, to be able to make comments in social media and things like that. To be honest, as it relates to my business and the church, I haven't had anything yet. Obviously, we're new, and so that's probably coming. Uh, I think that there's a lot of freedom in knowing you walk and work with integrity. If you don't have anything to hide, right, then you can be confident in what you're doing. And so I think that's just probably the biggest thing for people is if there's always like you can never escape people that are going to hate or have criticism or come against or have opposition to what you're doing. Actually, when you get that type of stuff, it's probably indication you're doing something right. But as long as you have values and you're integrous and you're kind of following those values, then you can be secure and confident, even in the midst of struggle and opposition and comments and criticism.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you. Wait, wrapping up, I have one final question.
Yeah.
If you were to look back your young self, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, what three advice would you give your young self?
Learn how to code. Learn how to code. I mean, there's two things that I would focus on if I were 17 today is doing things like this and being exposed, like increasing your exposure as much as possible to leaders that you look up to, right? And learning how people work, how to motivate people, how to lead people. That's one thing, but I feel like I've done that decently well. Um, the other thing is know how to build things, right? And so, you know, I haven't learned how to code myself, so I really depend on my leadership ability to motivate people that know how to code to actually build things that I want to build. But it'd be so cool if I could jump in and build it with them or just build it myself, right? That'd be super cool as well. So those are the two things. If you know how to lead and you know how to build, you can do almost anything in this world. So I would encourage you to do one of those two things, but if you do both, it's powerful.
Nice, nice. That's super awesome. That's super awesome. Thank you so very much. It's been
Hey, thanks, guys.
amazing 1 hour session. I think that the three things is learn how to code, learn how to build, and learn how to lead people. So those are the things that make the world go around. So actually,
I
so
love it. I love it.
with advice, it's been definitely an amazing session. Please, I want a round of applause for Professor Vance Roush for taking time out of his busy session today to be with
Yeah.
us.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, so thank you so much.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thanks, guys. Cheers. Bye. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot. So that's the way we usually do. We have the speaker series, form, try to ensure that you fill the form because we usually send your feedback directly um to the speakers so that they appreciate your time with you and all of that. So I will try to repost the link again for you to repost both for Jacqueline and also for Vance Rush, who were here today to spend time with us. So this afternoon, we're gonna do some bit of idea hop, in the afternoon, and then we'll probably also, maybe focus on projects. Vidit, go ahead.
So in the first speaker series with Bob Purcell, he gave us our emails so that we could contact him later on. So is that something we could do with these people as well? Have they like said that we can contact them and like talk to them or ask them questions later on, or is that just with him?
I think that's just for Bob Portia, actually. So
Okay.
yeah, cool, awesome. Okay, anybody else questions? I do hope that this today's morning session has been great, for you. So definitely, I would see how things go and work. Hopefully, we're going to make this 1 month a very, very wonderful experience for you as well. We intend to bring in more speakers and more guest instructors as well, so you can get a feel of different type of people and get to know a lot of people as well. I encourage you to have a LinkedIn profile and reach out to those facilitators on LinkedIn, build your own network, and send them a few things that about you learned from their session. And you just never know, right? You're going to go to college, you're going to look for internships. This could be your access to future opportunities, right? So I will take a break now and we'll resume back at 2